To get an IEP, a diagnosis is going to be required. The services your child will get will be determined by that diagnosis. So how you get that diagnosis will affect the services your child will get. This video covers the different ways of getting a diagnosis and the pros and cons of each. Sometimes you'll see a child fit into a diagnosis that is not exactly accurate, but may get them what they need. On the other hand, that diagnosis may be detrimental and they will underperform. Because of that, it is very important that you consider the implications of a diagnosis and how you get it. There is a tremendous amount of debate around this subject. Opinions vary. Because of that, we feel that it's our responsibility to present those opposing opinions and let you, as a parent, decide what is right for your child, which is the way it should be, always. I'm Liz Weaver of Learning Success. We've put together this video to help educate parents around IEPs. This series is here to save you and other parents the incredible difficulty that can be IEPs. We hope it helps you, and we hope you share it with others. Together, we can help a lot of children get the education they deserve. Now, let's see what the experts have to say about getting the required diagnosis for an IEP.
So I was aware of IEPs and 504s before that because I am a social worker by training, and I was a school social worker for a year in a public middle school and was part of some of the team decision-making meetings and coming together with students who were getting IEPs. So I had some awareness, but I really didn't truly understand all that went into it until I became a parent of two children who needed extra support in school. So because of the amazing second grade teacher that we had, we started out with a 504. That's what we were encouraged to do. So I just went along with sort of what was suggested to us. In order for my daughter to qualify for a 504, she had to be officially diagnosed with something, which that in and of itself, I think I have different feelings about that. But I also feel like there is a time and a place where you have to sort of play in the rules of the system. So her pediatrician diagnosed her as ADD, which was not a made-up diagnosis. She certainly displayed various behavior types that go along with attention deficit disorder. I actually really believe that she was suffering more from PTSD and not ADD, and it just manifested in similar behavior. Nevertheless, we went with the ADD diagnosis because we knew that it would get us a 504. We didn't necessarily know that we could push hard for that evaluation, so we actually sought out outside evaluations for both of our daughters. They were both evaluated by a educational psychologist. We had to pay out of pocket for that. It was incredibly expensive. We are lucky and fortunate and privileged enough to have the means to do that. I realize that obviously not every family is able to do that, which is frustrating to me that is something that is a truth. So know that you don't have to have outside testing in order for your child to get evaluations, or to be evaluated rather. My middle daughter's school did the same exact tests that we had already received to her, or that she'd already been tested on, but they needed to have it within the system. So in some ways, I guess the outside educational testing was helpful because it just gave us better ideas as to how they were learning and what was going on with them.
When to consider getting a referral or a test for your child. This can be a really hard decision because oftentimes learning differences present themselves in behavioral ways, particularly ADHD, dyslexia, processing deficits, reading, numeracy issues. Children can appear as if they don't want to learn. They can't focus, they won't pay attention, they're easily distracted, they're not following instructions, they won't stop moving, they can't get organized, they don't want to read or they don't want to write. Often, this behavior can distract parents and teachers from the very real cognitive impairment that's going on inside a child. So when you see one or two or three of these red flags, this may be normal. Every child, every learner struggles with paying attention or motivation. But when a child has most, if not all, of these red flags popping up at the same time, usually this signals that there is a significant learning impairment going on. Talk to your doctor, talk to your child's teachers, talk to other adults who understand your child well. And if they're seeing the same things and share the same concerns, it's a good idea to get them tested.
And you're probably wondering, what is a school psychologist? Many people have told me that they have never heard of a school psychologist. So the primary role of school psychologists is generally to conduct psychological or psychoeducational evaluations and provide consultation to the educators as to how they can best support the children in their classroom. Prior to a child being evaluated by a school psychologist, there may be several meetings with members at the school, team members at the school, as well as with parents to discuss a child's progress or lack thereof, and to discuss what type of interventions have been in place and what other types of interventions may be considered to implement. After all of those things have been exhausted and it appears that the child or adolescent is not making adequate progress, then a teacher and a parent may decide that they want to have a child or adolescent evaluated. And that evaluation usually consists of tests that look at their intellectual functioning, their academic skills, maybe behavior rating skills to see how they exhibit certain behaviors in the school environment versus the home environment or the community. Also, there may be rating scales to screen for any type of emotional difficulties.
As we talked about in the previous video, deciding if an IEP is right for your child, it is not only important but necessary to do everything possible before considering an IEP. The IEP process is lengthy, time-consuming, and expensive for schools and parents alike. Depending on your situation, it could be very helpful, but it is certainly not the first thing to try. As a matter of fact, it is the last. If your child is struggling in school, then the first thing to do is start them on the learning success system. It builds up the fundamentals of learning. It builds confidence. It gets them enjoying learning once more. These things will not only get your child enjoying school, but it will make your life so much easier. Less time spent on homework, less time fighting with your child, less time worrying about your child losing more confidence as they fall farther and farther behind their peers. Wouldn't doing a few minutes of exercise each day be easier than all that? With or without an IEP, you will still want your child on the learning success system because children whose parents help them at home always outperform those who don't. That's why I'm giving you a free trial. Just click the link above or the link in the description.
Avoidance should be taken against those who see a student struggling and immediately suggest the need for an evaluation without employing any research-based interventions. As we know, students learn differently and all students respond to instructional strategies and interventions differently. As a result, all children should be afforded opportunities to increase their skills and abilities through the selection of strategies and interventions that are aligned specifically to support their individual needs and abilities. An immediate request for testing and or the development of an IEP is just not appropriate and should be avoided.
Please, before you go into your meeting, please have a formal diagnosis from a pediatric neurologist. It is very important. Schools will base an IEP on the formal diagnosis that they are given. What you do not want is for the school to run tests and to give you a diagnosis. Usually, in many cases, the school's assessments are skewed in their favor and therefore do not reflect an actual diagnosis or an actual result. This is extremely important.
So, what do IEPs and 504s not provide? Parents should know that after school testing, many schools do not provide specific clinical diagnoses such as a reading learning disorder or ADHD. Public schools typically provide educational testing, and while psychologists provide psychological testing. So they are different. These tests are different. School psychologists are not clinical psychologists, and they have different training, credentials, and professional roles. School evaluations are limited and often brief. Most schools do not comprehensively assess what emotional, psychological, or behavioral problems or conditions a child may have, and may only loosely refer to these. This is unfortunate because parents sometimes can lack a full understanding of the magnitude of the child's problems or conditions or challenges and the critical need for outside providers. When children receive school services exclusively without outside providers complementing services, parents can have a false sense that the child's problems are being adequately addressed, and many times they're not. Parents can be unaware that the child has a neurodevelopmental condition that might require more services or treatment that schools cannot and do not provide. Some schools are simply reluctant to complain to parents about the child's problems until they can't be avoided any longer. Parents can be motivated to approach outside behavioral health providers only after the child continues to struggle and suffer and have more severe or frequent school problems or complaints. Some teachers are even instructed by school administration not to specifically discuss their concerns with parents that they suspect that a child might have a learning disorder or ADHD. Fortunately, having a mental health or a medical diagnosis from an outside provider can greatly assist students in qualifying for 504s and IEPs. These are required for 504 plans in most cases. Clinicians can assist families with the process of requesting school services by writing a letter to the school that states their diagnoses and recommends that they receive a 504 or an IEP. Letters or psychological testing reports from outside providers typically help to substantiate the need for a 504 and IEP. Indeed, it's harder for schools to minimize a parent's request for school services when outside providers are involved.
That's the sad news. Even if you get the most comprehensive IEP possible, your child may not get what they need. Schools are generally not equipped to build up fundamental learning skills. They can be very good at providing academics. That's what they do. But they do not provide help in building up the learning micro skills, the fundamental learning skills your child needs to succeed, the skills your child needs to perform well in school, to catch up to and even surpass their peers. I'm talking about developmental skills, not academic skills. And without developmental skills being optimal, academic skills can be very difficult or even impossible. Yet so many kids are just given more homework, told to work harder, without helping them with these underlying learning skills. It's sort of cruel in a way. Your child doesn't have to struggle in academics. Start the Learning Success System now and get your child on the path to success today. Get a free trial by clicking the link in the description, and I'll see you in the Learning Success members area.